Welcome to the Bruce Williams channel. In this podcast style presentation, I'm going to talk about the new news out of Breitling that they have discontinued the Superocean and they have replaced it with a new generation that carries a new case, new bezel, new bracelet, new dial, new variation of the movement, a new clasp. It's an entirely new model that I think is divisive to say the least. And so we're going to talk about the changes here. We're going to talk about the updates and whether or not this is a good move. Did Breitling do something good here, or is this a mistake? I'm going to talk about both sides of the aisle here. So whether you love this watch, this new release from Breitling, or whether you think it's a dog and you hate it, I'd like to discuss this with you here. So let's first start off by talking about the Outgoing generation briefly. So this one has large Arabic markers at the 12, 6, and 9 o'clock positions. We have the Wings logo as an applique on the dial. We have a date at the 3 o'clock position. And we have a metallic bezel insert that is relief in style. It's a very sharp model that plays a little bit smaller than the nominal dimensions would indicate. And I found that to be true with prior generations of the Superocean. If you like a 40, you should buy a 42. If you like 42, you should buy a 44. It's just the sizing, the dimensions, the fit of this specific model. So I know some of you that watch me, you own the Superocean. You own this now discontinued generation. And seeing it be retired is kind of a sad thing. Maybe you were planning on buying one and now you're kind of in a rush to go out and buy one before you can't get it anymore. And I am hearing reports that it is no longer orderable for authorized dealers. And so when this stock sells out through the authorized distributorship, it's going to be gone forever. And you can only purchase this new version that we're going to be talking about. So let's talk about the new variation. This one looks a little bit more sleek, a little bit more shiny. It has some more pop when it comes to those reflective surfaces. So no longer is there a relief style bezel. We now have a conical shape that is fashioned out of polished ceramic. And so that in and of itself, I think is a nice thing. We have added scratch resistance. We no longer have a polished steel insert that goes between that bezel, that relief style bezel and the cambered sapphire crystal. So this should hide wear and tear better over time, over use, which I think is a good thing. We also have polished center links on the bracelet, which admittedly, I'm not a big fan of polished center links on most watches. So that is present on the new variation, but I do like this sleeker case. It's a little bit more curvaceous than the prior generation, though we still do have crown guards. There's a polished beveled edge that feels fluid when it comes to, the profile here. And I'm dropping in pictures from Breitling's website. I will have hands-on with this watch in future weeks, so stay tuned for that if you'd like to look at my own photographed macro shots and all of that. But just for this video, we're going to be taking a look at the product images from Breitling's website. But the thing that I like about this new design is the fact that it's retro in nature. Breitling is going back again decades to their history and taking design elements from the slow motion chronograph from the 60s and incorporating it here into the Superocean, which, if you think about, is slightly unnecessary because we have the Superocean heritage. We also have the Superocean heritage from the capsule collection, the 57 version. So we have a lot of retro Superocean elements and models, but this one is also taking retro cues in the overall design language. But I'd say it's not dominant. This still feels more like a sleek, contemporary watch, and I think that's aided by the fact that we have ceramic, that we have sapphire, that we have polished center links, that we have these very bold dial options. I love the orange, and I absolutely love the turquoise. I think this is going to be far and away the most popular version of the new Superocean. In fact, I think it's going to become very difficult to come by. There's going to be wait lists. There's going to be premiums on the secondary market. In fact, I think it's going to become a collectible in future years. And I know turquoise is kind of a hype color right now. We see that We see that throughout the industry. This has been a fad, cyclical in nature. I remember when blue was in, then green was in. Apparently, turquoise is the new in color, and a lot of brands are coming out with watches that have turquoise dials in order to capitalize on this momentary hype. Will this be a permanent fixture where turquoise is always considered cool? I don't think so. I think eventually people will get tired of turquoise, and in coming decades, we will look back at turquoise dialed watches and say, wow, that is so dated looking. That looks so early 2020s. Just like now, a lot of us can date watches from the 60s and 70s because of their quintessential aspects that were very popular in those respective eras. But I'm getting sidetracked here. Let's go back to the design inspiration, which is the slow motion chronograph. This is the reason we have that large, high contrast index track that also serves as the rehat or the chapter ring. And in having something so visually dominant, it helps the dial feel smaller and more like a porthole. And it also emphasizes the thinner nature of that polished ceramic bezel insert. I think as an overall watch, there is a good concentric progression to the proportions. And the more I look at this, the more I'm liking it. And I have a feeling a lot of you watching or listening right now, you might be unsure, or you might be feeling negative toward the new version of the Superocean. But over time, and perhaps even during the course of this video, you're going to be coming around to it. And the more you look at it, the more you'll like it. And I think this is funny because I've been guilty of this. I'll dog on a watch. I'll trash a watch a little bit when it first comes out. But later on in the year, I'm lining up to buy one because it's grown on me. And I've learned about it, and I've seen the design elements, and I've looked at the subtleties, and I've looked at the materials and the dimensions and the color play and how this watch may, work in conjunction with other watches in my rotation. It's very funny how we can go from hating something to loving something. And I think a lot of you watching will go through that process. I think a lot of the initial comments will be negative, but 6 months from now or 1 year from now, the overall reception, I think, will be very positive. And again, eventually, we will have watch enthusiasts be very cranky and very crabby when this new version eventually is discontinued and replaced with yet another generation of the Superocean. So going back again, I'm getting sidetracked again. Going back to the design elements of the dial, this is all about function. This is about being used as a dive watch. And so we have no need for a date. We have no need for a dominant hour hand. What we do have need for is a very high contrast visible minute hand, because that's the important hand member that interacts with your impromptu elapsed timer in the bezel. You need to know how many minutes you've been underwater. You don't need to know the date. You don't generally need to know the hour of the day either. It's all about knowing that your watch is running and how long you've been underwater. And so this has perfect symmetry. It has good balance. It has good contrast. And it's, again, ideally suited to be used as a dive watch in water. There's a good amount of lume in these faceted applied markers that I think are an enhancement over the prior generation that had lovely markers, lovely Arabic markers, but they were pressed out of the dial. These ones are true appliques that carry different surfaces that are mirror polished. So in low light, you're getting light play, you're getting reflections, and that will help the legibility in those low light conditions. And then when you're not in low light, you're in natural light or you're in artificial light. You're getting a little bit of that glitz and glam, those reflections, that light play that helps elevate the overall feel of your watch to a small degree. Now let's talk about a big change that I know a lot of you have been clamoring for, you've been looking forward to, and that is a new clasp, a modern clasp. I've said this in prior videos, but Breitling clasps, at least on their bracelets, have always felt a little bit dated. They felt a little bit lacking. And although they did tweak, the prior generation mid-cycle, this is an entirely new clasp. And as you guys can see, there's a signature, there's a twin trigger release, it's entirely milled. And Breitling states that you now have 15 millimeters of adjustable travel that you engage with on the underside of the clasp. So this is a quick adjust clasp. and you get a lot of travel. I think this looks really, really good. And you get this clasp, you get this engineering, whether you buy the rubber strap variation or the bracelet variation that carries the diagonal slashed links with the PCLs. Again, I mentioned I'm not the biggest fan of PCLs personally. I do know it brings added light play, it brings some visual interest, but they are, I don't know, they don't look great over time as you use a sports piece. They're easily scratched and scuffed, and you see smudges and dirt and fingerprints and all of that stuff that comes with wearing a watch. I don't advocate for safe queens, but PCLs aren't my favorite. The bracelet variation for this new Superocean comes with polished center links, but the nice thing is you get this awesome clasp that I think will be very well received. Now let's talk about dimensions. I mentioned this in the beginning of the video, but when it comes to the Superocean, you always want to go with the larger size than the watch you like from a different brand. So if you like wearing 40 millimeter watches from, say, Rolex, you should go with the 42 millimeter Breitling. This looks to have the same type of proportions as the prior generation Superoceans, and so I think the 44 would be the ideal size for me, for my wrist, for my frame, because it's going to wear more like a 42. And I really like the thin profile, the 12.6 millimeter profile from the back of the closed case back to the top of the cambered sapphire crystal with dual layers, top and bottom, of anti-reflective treatment. This is going to sit comfortably on wrist, trim and elegant. It's going to feel nice, especially with that light play and that pop of color. If you go with one of the vibrant options like the orange or like the turquoise that I'm heavily featuring here in this video, 22 millimeter lug width, tapering down 4 millimeters in the bracelet to 18 at the new clasp. We have a 50.5 millimeter lug to lug dimension. So again, I think this is going to be very wearable, very comfortable. And instead of having the Wings logo, we now have the B logo, which I know some of you will not like, but aesthetically, I think this is the strongest thing. It ties in well with the crown. It goes nice as you look at this visual progression north to south and east to west. The dial feels balanced. If there was a Wings logo, I don't think it would be quite as strong. Another change here is the grip of the bezel, which looks to be enlarged and a little bit different from the coin edge style of the prior generation. So overall, I think this is going to be nicer. No word yet on whether the action will be crisper or more mechanical feeling, but as I get hands-on with this, I'll gladly report on how the bezel action is and how it compares to the prior generation of the Superocean. Now let's talk about one other fairly large change, and that is the movement. We still have the Breitling caliber 17, which I believe prior to this new update carried an ETA base movement that was chronometer certified, 38 hours of power reserve, and finished very tastefully. According to Breitling's website, they're saying that this carries 26 joules. So this is likely not an ETA anymore. It's likely a Sellita with a no date variation that is also chronometer certified, carries the same specs when it comes to power reserve and beat rate. But I know some of you will be very disappointed by the fact that this is likely a Sellita in a watch that will retail for $4,700 on the rubber and $4,900 on the bracelet. You go to a different brand, say Omega, you're getting in-house, you're getting Metis certifications, and you look at a Sellita from Breitling, that can be a little bit disappointing. But nonetheless, that appears to be the movement within the case, and I don't think it's a deal breaker. Here's the thing, guys. When I was newly in the hobby, I was talking about only one watch. You can only have one watch. You better have all the dang best specs packed into one for the lowest price possible. And the more I've stayed in the hobby, the more I've delved down this rabbit hole, the more I've realized the one watch is a myth for a lot of us. And so I can enjoy a well-made Sellita that's chronometer certified from, say, Tudor or Breitling because I have a different watch, say my Grand Seiko, that's a high beat from Japan. And a different watch is an annual calendar from Rolex. And another one is an affordable Seiko with a 4R movement. So it's kind of fun to have the variety, but I do recognize you're not getting the best value when it comes to movement specs in this new version of the Superocean. So I've mentioned other negative elements. I don't like the PCLs. The turquoise will probably look very dated in coming decades, but on the whole, love the bold colors. I like the Note 8. I like that massive, awesome minute hand that is all about legibility and contrast. I like the thin profile. I like the anti-reflective treatment. Breitling is among the leaders in doing great sapphire crystals with very clear anti-reflective treatment. So overall, I like the retro heritage, but it's still very much a modern feeling Breitling that feels Breitling, if that makes sense. They have in years past been large and blingy, kind of uncomfortable, kind of ostentatious, maybe a little bit crass, if I'm honest. But this new direction under Kern, they're still Breitling. They're still loud. They still have presence. They're still individualistic. They're still distinctive from across the room, but they're more palatable. They're more organized. They're more cohesive as design language across different platforms, across different models. And I like that. So I think this is a strong design that will grow on the minds of watch enthusiasts. I think some of you that are kind of negative on this now, your tune might change in the coming year. I know initially I thought this was, I don't know, kind of an ugly watch, kind of reminded me of a micro brand. But as I've digested it and spent more time, got over my knee-jerk reaction, I think this is a very intriguing release. Not perfect, but a move that I respect. I think it's easy to criticize and to critique, and I do my fair share of that as a reviewer on YouTube, but I have to give props where props are due. It's hard to do something as a brand that is bold, and maybe you're not sure how it will be received. At the end of the day, you want to make money. You don't want to debut a flop. And so this, a little bit divisive, but bold, and a kind of a gutsy move from Breitling, and I'd like to give them some props for that. But guys, whether you love this watch or hate this watch, I'd like to hear your opinion in the comment section. Have you found your opinion swaying even over the past 24 hours since the release? Are you growing more fond of this? Are you growing less fond of this? Let me know in the comment section. I'll go through and read them. I always appreciate your thoughtful input. I have a lot of content that I'm excited to be sharing with you here in the near future. So again, have a great day. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.